Yeah, well, I think the idea of white privilege is absolutely reprehensible. And it's not because white people aren't privileged. You know, we have all sorts of privileges, and most people have privileges of all sorts, and you should be grateful for your privileges and work to deserve them, I would say. But the idea that you can target an ethnic group with a collective crime, regardless of the specific innocence or guilt of the constituent elements of that group, there is absolutely nothing that's more racist than that. It's absolutely abhorrent. I can't... I mean, if you really want to know more about that sort of thing, you should read about the kulaks in the Soviet Union in the 1920s, K-U-L-A-K-S, because they were farmers who were very productive. They were the most productive element of the agricultural strata in Russia, and they were virtually all killed or raped and robbed by the collectivists, who insisted that because they showed signs of wealth, they were criminals and robbers. So, and one of the consequences of the prosecution of the kulaks was the death of 6 million Ukrainians from a famine in the 1930s. The idea of collectively held guilt at the level of the individual as a legal or philosophical principle is dangerous. It's precisely the sort of danger that people who are really looking for trouble would push. So, and just a cursory glance at 20th century history should teach anyone who wants to know exactly how unacceptable that is. With regards to your first, okay, there's the safe space issue, but you also said something right at the beginning. You announced your sexual preference at the beginning, and I understand exactly why you did that, but I have a comment about that. And this is something for people in the audience to think about. I've received at least 25 letters from transsexual people, and that's quite a few because there aren't that many transsexual people, right? So they're rare, they're very rare, and every single one of them but one was supportive, and the one that wasn't supportive was mildly critical, and they said exactly the same thing that you said, roughly speaking, is that, and so one of the things we want to remember is that just because some noisy activists stand up and say, because I'm a member of this group, or even worse, because I say I'm a member of this group, I am therefore an advocate for that group's interests, is we should just dispense with that self-identification as a worthy representative instantaneously, because it's predicated on the idea that one dimension of a person's identity is sufficiently what would you say, broad and all-encompassing, so that you can infer their political stance, for example, which you can't. And so the trans people that have written me, they all say the same thing. A, those people do not speak for me. B, we're not all the same. C, most of us think that the enforced
So 2016 was a funny year, politically. I know it seems very far away. But the political alliances formed during that era, the cultural philosophies that crystallized during that era are still reverberating today. Recently, I watched Armored Skeptic make a video about postmodernism. And postmodernism is right up there with cultural Marxism and the Frankfurt School, excuse me, as in terms of cultural conspiracy theories. Postmodernism is a real thing, but postmodernism is not a real threat. That's my problem with some of the skeptics and the alt-right picking up postmodernism as a cultural threat. It's very interesting to see a group of people that would have been very much so in favor of postmodernism until they didn't see their culture and values on the platter, up on the chopping block. Now, what's very funny is that if you put an eye to the skeptic community 5 or 10 years ago, you will have seen a struggle between liberal and conservative white men, more or less. The skeptic community, the vanguard of the skeptic community online was a bunch of white dudes. And one could say that a lot of the vanguard atheists that came out during the Bush era were white men. And it's fascinating to me that 2016 brought together people like Bill Maher and Milo Yiannopoulos. 2016 taught people outside of that privilege bubble that white men are going to stick together, that their whiteness and their manness is more important to them than any other identity, whether it's atheism. And if you want to test that out, you can watch Bill Maher calling Milo Yiannopoulos the next Christopher Hitchens, even though Milo Yiannopoulos is a Catholic. You can watch a bunch of Kekistanis funding the monthly Patreon of Jordan B. Peterson to the tune of a few $1,000 every month, even though he's and a lot of people like Armored Skeptic, who's very politically naive, have picked up Jordan B. Peterson as a prophet for the preservation of Western culture and Western values, and particularly what seems to me as a protection of when they say liberal Western values, they mean defending the privilege of liberal white men against intersectional feminism. So, what has come out of that has peaked with this week. Skeptic Magazine did a review of this garbage new book by Milo Yiannopoulos, and they use the term cultural Marxism. You've probably heard, if you've watched any sort of right-leaning content online or any kind of reactionary content online, you will have heard those buzzwords over and over again. Cultural Marxism, postmodernism, and they will have been presented as cultural cancers and threats. It's so fascinating to me that 10 years ago, these two groups of white men were fighting against each other, and now they've recognized common cause in defending their position, and using these extreme reactionary talking points about the threats of cultural Marxism, the threats of progressivism, the threats of the hordes, the immigrant hordes from other lands coming here to undermine our values. And within that culture, there's a lot of use of the word cuck, and I think that has a great deal to do with the idea that if you don't join us in this common cause, you're a man letting someone else get off on fucking your wife. I think that there's a very old phobia of white men fearing brown dicks coming en masse to their country and fucking their women and fucking them out of existence. A lot of the fear mongering on the right is about breeding and the end of the white race and the muddying of gene pools, and one wing of that will go, oh well, we're concerned about the preservation of race, and the other wing of that, which is liberal white guys, will go, well, no, we're just concerned about the preservation of Western values. Don't you want your gay friends to have liberty? And don't you want, aren't you afraid that the Muslims are going to come here and throw trans people off of roofs and stuff like that? Look, you don't need to go to the Middle East to find reactionary homophobes. You can find them right here at home. Donald Trump put out a signal to that constituency this week when he made public aspersions about the trans community serving in the military, and most importantly, the messaging that trans people are not equal humans, that they are somehow invalids, and tending to them medically within the military is somehow going to be exceptionally difficult compared to other soldiers, which is interesting because that was a lot of the less than 10 years ago, that was a lot of the bitching from the right wing about why women shouldn't be in the military. Women have their periods, women get pregnant, It's going to cost more money to maintain a womb than a penis. I guess they have some kind of discount on jock itch cream or something. So they need to keep they need to keep the military as dick-oriented as possible. We'll see. So yeah, I am always fascinated. You know, I could have done a video. I was thinking to do a video about postmodernism, but at this point, there's no reason for me. You know, number one, because a lot of people in the community have done great videos. Peter Coffin did a great video about postmodernism, and Gwen No Fear did a great video about postmodernism. I'm going to try to link that in the description. They do a way better job than me of explaining what postmodernism is in reality. But I just wanted to do a video about buzzwords and how to ascertain whether somebody is bullshitting you when they present postmodernism as a threat. You can dismiss that person out of hand. When they present cultural Marxism as existing, not just as a threat, because cultural Marxism does not exist. The Frankfurt School thing has been bent and twisted into full-blown 9/11 loose change conspiracy theory. So if someone comes to you and they say that they're a rational skeptic, and then they start complaining about cultural Marxism, you can refer them to Alex Jones' InfoWars website, because they have gone full truther. Only their truth is about, you know, the gynocratic conspiracy to supplant the cock.